we've had a slight funny start to Talkaoke, but welcome. My name's Evie, and we're here at the Festival of Genomics and Biodata, and I wanted to start off with talking about the title of today's session is Genomics and Diversity. So what does that mean to you? So I wanted to open up the floor and ask people here, if someone wants to pop on their mic, what does diversity in genomics mean to you?
I'm happy to start on that. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, so genomics and diversity means making sure that everyone has equitable access to genomics and all the benefits that genomics can give. It is my view on it, and I think it definitely needs to be improved. But I don't think I'm the best to talk about how to improve it. I'd love to hear from other people how they think it can be done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So yes, what does it mean? Do people agree with Rebecca? Do people think that they've got maybe a different take on what it means to have diversity in genomics? What do other people think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? We've got a few people who have joined. We've got Avji, let me know if I pronounce your name correctly, Sarah, Louise. Anyone here would like to agree or disagree or add to what Rebecca's just said? If you want to say something, you can. I've got Mikey behind me actually who wants to say something. If you do want to say something, feel free to pop your video on for a second so that we know that you'd like to talk, or you can just turn your microphone on as well.
I've got my own mic here. No, I mean, as I'm just going to come into so you can see my face. As somebody with Ashkenazi heritage, I'm quite lucky because apparently most of the genomic work has been done on people with my heritage, and I guess that means that there's much more knowledge about the kind of diseases, like for example BRCA2. In my heritage is it's quite a well-known system. So in a way, I'm quite lucky. But should that situation change?
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Mikey. So, some people say maybe there's been a lot of research into their background or their heritage. But, what does that mean? Do people agree with this? What are the issues around diversity in genomics? Like when we talk about diversity in genomics, what are people actually wanting to talk about? And, what are the problems in contemporary medicine and contemporary research that need to have a light shone on them? Maybe, does anyone here work in the area themselves? Well, maybe we've got Rebecca who would like to chime in on that.
Yeah, I don't work in the area myself, but it definitely know that there isn't enough diversity, mainly because of potentially how clinical trials have been recruited in the past. It's, looking at, people who can have the time to go to a hospital, in the middle of the week. And that obviously can be a way of biasing it. And as Mikey said, sometimes in previous studies, you really just want to focus on, Ashkenazi heritage. And it's like, well, and that can obviously be useful, but now we're getting further and further and away from those data sets, and where we're looking at bigger and bigger control groups, and we're looking at these more diverse and difficult diseases, or disorders, that we can't do that. We can't just go, oh, let's only look at this. But then on the flip side, there are areas where there haven't been enough attention at all, like what we saw with how COVID-19 seems to be disproportionately affecting people from BAME backgrounds. We don't know why yet.
So would people agree? I'm quite interested in what Rebecca's saying, that maybe there's problems of access, of how do you get people involved in research trials in the first place, and how do we want to get people involved? So is anyone here within that area at all, or is interested in that area, maybe works with patients or people and they're trying to get them into research trials? What's your experience of running that? maybe you don't work in it, but maybe you've read about it and you've got some opinions. Come and share them with us. Talkaoke is all about sharing your opinions and having a discussion with one another. So I don't know, we've got some people on the Zoom here that haven't said anything yet. So let us hear your voice. Let us hear your thoughts on this topic. There we go. Oh, we've got a few more people joining. Anyone got any thoughts on this? Or maybe you don't think it's an issue at all. Maybe you think that it's not necessary to have this conversation. If so, we want to know why. Why do you think that's the case?
I'm getting some comments in the chat that I will post through as well from Swapcard.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Yes, if anyone wants to bring those up as well, we can sort of bring them out onto the table and discuss.
Yeah, there's quite a lot here from Diana on the chat I'm seeing. It's probably too much actually to read out as a statement, but Diana's talking about the economic differences to consider, the global perspective, education, there's all these topics, and it's not just, Diana's also, basically this is a whole, Diana's written a whole kind of thesis here. Diversity in genomics not only means equitable access, it's also important to talk about how we have diversity with global genomic data sets to help improve our understanding. So it's, we are getting a fairly narrow view, I think, at the moment, and obviously there's lots of work being done to expand that. But what's your opinion on it? How are we doing the right things? Is anyone involved in this work?
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you for people sharing those thoughts. We've got Katie, you had a point, and also then we've got some points maybe from Shannon Gunn in the chat as well. But Katie, please go.
Thank you. I think that it's not just a genomics issue, as I'm pretty sure many will agree. And I think the way the genomics field is affected by lack of diversity is more as a result of various issues in diversity in larger scale. So they just get kind of replicated in the genomics, just like if you have lack of diversity in general life, in various, common areas like education, like financial status, social status, and so on. So it will come to genomics as too. So, if people in certain groups are struggling to put food on the table, genomics will be pretty far on their list of priorities. So they won't even read about it, even if it could benefit them, let's say in this COVID crisis. But the priorities will be different. So I think that diversity in any field won't be tackled until we tackle it at a larger scale.
Brilliant. So you think maybe it's like a larger scale, it's a social justice issue, it's not necessarily a small scientific issue. Mikey, behind me.
I just want to sort of throw in something that we were hearing yesterday from one of our participants, Natalie, who was saying that, yes, we were talking about COVID yesterday, and in terms of COVID, that it is disproportionately affecting BAME communities, but within those communities, there's a great deal of diversity about who is affected, who is more susceptible, who needs different regimens of treatment. And that genomics gives a big clue to that. So, when we talk about diversity, it's not just that, the kind of, in a way that, I don't know how to say it, but like our view of diversity of different ethnic groups or different country groups, but we need to, in a way that diversity actually goes even deeper down, and perhaps genomics could give us a different view on diversity, a different understanding of diversity at a deeper level.
Brilliant. So maybe, when we talk about diversity, we don't really know what we're talking about. There's actually a lot of research that's yet to be done for us to fully understand this science. Does anyone agree or disagree? We've got a few people in the chat who haven't said anything. We have Shannon Gunn in the comments who's saying, how can we reach communities where there's a lack of trust towards healthcare? Again, do people in this chat agree? Do you think there is a lack of trust towards healthcare? Is that just in the UK? Is that across? Is that globally? I've got a point behind me from Mikey.
Well, no, I just want to feed back again as what we were talking about yesterday, and that when we were talking about COVID, we started talking about trust because trust became the main kind of barrier, the main kind of pivot point, really, when it came to, you know, how the COVID strategy was rolling out and you know, how to gain trust in the wider non-medical community.
Excellent. So it's, well, yeah, there's issues of trust, there's issues of maybe a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy of people looking for patterns, perhaps. Like, where do we want this conversation to go? You know, what do we think the issues are? Has anyone got any ideas about saying, actually, I really know this, how to solve it? What do we think?
I think we'd all love to say, yeah, we know how to solve it. We know how to solve diversity issues. But I think a similar thing is from yesterday was education and awareness of making people aware of these things and how, you know, they are potentially being effective differently. And that is like, you know, and get people campaigning almost. Like, I know it shouldn't really be from the ground up. It should be, you'd hope, from the top down. But people don't think this is an issue. You know, you see something that says, you know, gene's been discovered that causes X, Y, or Z. And then actually when you look into it, it's like, oh, well, that work was only done in, you know, white British populations, you know, 80% male. And then you go, maybe something can be changed there. So I think some of the work that, say, like the UK Biobank and biobank centres around the world are doing is really good by having these diverse samples to, you know, really encourage it, because that's what we need. We need to make this stuff readily available to be used.
Katie, you had a hand up as well.
Thank you. I think Rebecca has a very good point. I think from the point of view of the people, if someone even goes to participate in research of genomics or anything, the first question they will ask themselves will be not only how it will benefit the field itself, but naturally they'll think, how will it benefit me? And people from communities with lower income, they will think, okay, usually like genomic related treatments, and even if I find something wrong with me, the solutions are so expensive that they will be unaffordable for me, so why bother? So I think that people don't see in a large way how it can benefit them until they reach fairly high in society, because it's kind of a almost, I mean, it certainly seems and sounds as a kind of a thing for rich people in a way, even though, you know, healthcare should be for all, but it is much more complicated. I have a partner who has an eye disease, but like, we would love to find out if genetics affected in any way, or whether it comes from somewhere else, because it's extremely rare disease. There are just like a few dozen people around. But then we think, okay, maybe we can get the testing, maybe we can do this, but what out of it? Will we be able to do the treatment even if it's found?
Oh, interesting. Thank you, Katie. So it's interesting to hear that maybe a bit more of a personal reflection of actually, if you are affected by something and you want to find out a bit more about maybe your own genomics or genetics, and it might be helpful. Actually, a lot of people don't really know how to go about it in the first place. Is there something, again, that people agree with? Do you feel like, you know, if you wanted to find out more about your own genetics or your own genetic medical history, do you think you would know where to go and what to do?
Probably. I was thinking about there were a few sites that we're making databases of various genomes, and would even tell you, let's say, what ancestry you had and so on. And I actually felt like participating in it until I found that all the data was sold somewhere. So then I realized that it's not even safe anymore. So it became another hurdle where psychologically I don't even feel like doing it, because I don't feel that that information will belong to me, because the company that does the research will own the data, even though the DNA is mine. So this becomes another hurdle where if something happens, I'm not rich enough to make a lawsuit for them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it's Katie brought up some interesting points, and maybe things that we have been talked about at the Festival of Genomics before, which is thinking about the popularity of kind of DNA testing kits, you know, but where is that data going? They might become slowly more available, but then that data is not your own. And how do you protect that? So do we think that maybe these sort of kits, are they a problem in modern day genetics? Are they misleading? If you're getting a kit that says that you're 20% this, 20% that, is that helpful? Is that actually good science? You know, what do people think in the, either here in the Zoom chat itself, maybe on our live stream as well, if you're commenting down in the comments below, let us what you think, or you better come and jump on Zoom, tell us what you know. You know, we're here at the Festival of Genomics, and it's all about making those new connections between different spheres and within the sector as well. So come and tell us what you know. So you know, we've had quite a lot of topics there from Katie. There's access, there's data privacy, there's how do you actually get that information in the first place. What do people think about this? What are our opinions?
Yeah, so I think the problem is that I agree with Katie, which is that, yeah, like, I think some of us go, oh, yeah, we probably know how to get our data if we're worried about, you know, how to get our genome sequence. You'd be like, go to our GP, because I know that is being rolled out, especially from the NHS in England for certain at some point, that you will be able to start this process of being able to go. But then it is with the NHS, you go, well, that's okay because it's the NHS. But then you do think with these big companies, if they do take your data, and then how that genomic data, potentially what you're told is, no, you're fine, you haven't got anything. But it depends if that is then passed over to, say, like an insurance company, and it actually shows you have a 10% risk of developing diabetes, for example, or something like that. And I think that's the real issue. And especially if those data sets are then informed by an underverse population to begin with. So that it's maybe very unfairly, you know, saying, no, these people are way more likely to get diabetes when in fact they're not. But I don't know. I always think it'd be better if we could all get our genome sequence. You know,
Okay,
if we could just all have that, if we could all have that data, but it's just how it's used. But you know, that's because I really like genetics, and you know, I'd be excited about knowing my. At the moment in the abstract, I'm excited about knowing, but I don't know if that changes with the reality. It'd be good to know if anyone has ever had their genome sequence, even for like ancestry purposes.
Brilliant, thank you, Rebecca. So there's some interesting thoughts there about thinking about, yes, has anyone here ever had their genome sequence? Have you ever wanted to find out a bit more about yourself? And then also thinking about actually it's not quite the, you know, if we have such a small selection of people tested in genetics, it might lead to misdiagnosis, it might lead to worse treatments. So we want to trying to make sure that we have a really large selection. I've got Mikey behind me, who's also got a point.
No, I think in an ideal world, everyone's genome would be sequenced and that information. I mean, this is an ideal world, so it's probably not like even logically possible to have everyone's data sequenced and have that available, but also anonymous, free, but you know, available to. And I think with an NHS, you can have these kind of things, but you know, it's, yeah. For example, I'm just ranting on raving now, but in Israel, just recently, they did a deal with the vaccine company to give them cheaper vaccines if they had access to all of the Israeli medical records. I can't remember which company it was now, but I just read in the news. So, you know, if the NHS had all this genomic data, would they just be happy to, you know, to look up? Would they look after it in the right way? Would they use that as an asset to sell to other countries and other companies?
Brilliant. It would be great actually to hear from anyone in the comments or on Zoom about if you do work for the NHS, do you know how that data is handled currently? Can you give us a bit more of an insight into how genomic data is handled in the NHS? You know, should we be worried? You know, I'm not going to throw too many ideas out there, but there's been a different approach to healthcare with the Tory government as opposed to a Labour government. You know, what does that affect? How does it affect us in the future? Do you disagree with everything I'm saying? I'm in the middle, so I can't give too many opinions, but I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this as well. How is it NHS dealing with our data, our biological data now, our genomic data now? And, you know, should we be worried? How matched up should it be? How available should it be to other people as well? Where are we going to go from here, guys? We've got, have we got any more comments in the feed? Of what people think about this topic, or indeed anything around genomics? Yeah, has anyone ever got themselves tested? Does anyone think that this is not an issue at all, and they would like to come and tell us why they think it's not an issue at all? Let us know. Let us know. I've got a hand up from Katie. Katie, go.
Well, there are very few of us today, so I guess it will be me talking a lot. But I think instead of dwelling on the problem itself, I have a solution. At least I know it would persuade me and maybe some other people. It is, if my DNA is analyzed, or even if it stays somewhere in the database and it gets analyzed in the future, I would love to get continuous updates, what new has been found out about it. So I know there are a lot of people who don't want to know, but if we even first tackle the people who are curious, I mean, and we satisfy their curiosity. You know, it's one thing to say that, okay, we checked your DNA and we found nothing. And it's kind of bland. I mean, even if it's nothing, there will be still something that could raise curiosity. And, you know, if I could find out that something interesting about myself, or anything like that, that would raise my curiosity. It would make me more likely to do it, even if privacy was an issue, even if something else was an issue. But I think that people have many varied interests. So if there are some interests we can tackle even before tackling all the other problems, that could kind of give a starting push to make people, you know, to open up the conversation. Because it's also not something people like talking about. They consider it extremely personal. But I mean, our name is personal, our height is personal, our eye color is personal, but everyone knows these, at least more or less. So, and we get used to it over time. I mean, I'm not sure how it will be after lockdown when everyone's so comfortable, you know, hiding behind the camera. But still, I think the best way to push any field forward is through curiosity, like taking rockets or anything in the history that went forward. It usually starts with really, really curious people pushing the field forward. And I am a very curious person, but at the moment, I don't see any good ways to satisfy my curiosity. It's either the price is too prohibitive, or I will have too little information even if I do it. So I think these are two things that maybe could be tackled. I don't know, maybe someone from the field could tell better.
Fantastic. Thank you, Katie. So it's almost, you'd like some role models who maybe are going to show, yes, I'm really going to take this on and champion this cause and get people more interested in genetic health.
Not so much as role models. It's more about you know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. I mean, like a lot of kids, and And one of the things that was a very big concern of mine was my eyesight, because I had a very bad one. So it caused me to research that field much more until I got the surgery and got it fixed. I mean, I'm still not a pilot, but that pushed me to investigate the area, like a medical field. So if we could connect various things with how opening up our DNA to research could help us, how it would benefit us, because a lot of people say, you know, how it benefits the world, how it benefits community, how it benefits the research, but very, very little is told, how does it benefit me personally? And it is a personal thing. So for me, that point is the most important. And yet everyone seems to push it so far away that, you know, maybe it will be sold, maybe it will be used, God knows how. And that's not your concern, but it should be.
Brilliant. That's a really great point. Thank you for sharing it. So yes, it's all about, actually, there needs to be some kind of benefit for you. It should be something that's owned by you entirely. And actually, we've got Luca, who's come in on the comments saying, I think data protection is paramount in the NHS. So referring to a little bit earlier about talking about genomic data and how it's shared within the NHS or how it's shared across the world. So I think data protection is paramount in the NHS, and legal tools, so like fines, are in place if there are breaches. Will it be the same once private companies enter the NHS via contracts? Can we trust these contractors? So thank you very much, Luca. I think that was an excellent point to throw in there.
Come and join in. Hit the join the Zoom button. Let's hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, we'd love to anyone. So Luca, Shannon, if any of you guys are, please come in and join the Zoom so you can share our thoughts as well, especially if you're currently working in this area. It would be great to hear your thoughts and hear your experience about this. So yes, so maybe private companies, there's a bit more of an issue. In the NHS, they seem to be quite, it sounds like they've got a lot of framework in place to protect people. But still, even if you give your data to the NHS, Katie's pointing out, you know, is it still really yours? It's a very personal amount of data. Maybe we want to keep it for ourselves. We want it to benefit us. Mikey, do you feel like you're going to benefit?
Well, I was just thinking about this because although we kind of, you know, we do all these Festival of Genomics chats, I've never had any interest in getting my, you know, finding out my genome and whatever service is out there. I've not, and the only person I know who's done that, who's like, and this is somebody that is a very curious person as well, and he only did it because he got a diagnosis of cancer. Like me, it was to do with the BRCA2 gene. It was an Ashkenazi thing, but it's only when he got a terminal diagnosis that he rushed to get his genome sequence, and to be honest, it was too late by then. So it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, you can't really turn that around and just go, oh, you know, do you want to get your genome sequence just to find out if you've got like these possibilities of terminal cancer? Because most people won't want to get into that that mindset. They won't want to think about things like that.
Brilliant. So it's almost, you know, whether we, even if we wanted to increase the amount of genomic data we have of the population of the world, you know, there's also a risk. You know, there might be some benefits that this information can give you, but there's also a really big risk, and a lot of people don't want to take that risk.
Well, I mean, I think in his case, it would have been really beneficial to know that he had, you know, this mutation, and that whether it would have changed his life, because he was a qualified doctor, but he was also a smoker. He knew the risks of smoking. Would this extra knowledge have changed his lifestyle? I don't know.
Brilliant. So, and you know, that's a very interesting point. You know, whenever we're looking at this kind of science, it's not just who you are and the DNA you're born with. It's also, we touched on a bit before, you know, it's also a lot of other factors that affect us. So, you know, is this how do you tackle diversity in genomics? I think we start off as well. What does that actually mean in a world which is so complicated and large? Again, where are we going to go with this, guys? You know, do people have answers? Katie?
I just got a thought. Could it be, maybe someone has an opinion on this, could it be that people see that the better knowledge of their genomics could affect their choices, the choices they make? So essentially, they would feel less free to make various choices because of that knowledge. And I guess people in marginalized groups, they already feel having less freedom. So for them to do something that will make them experience even less of it is much bigger trade-off than, you know, someone who is fairly high in society and they say, well, I already have plenty, like I can do anything, so why not? It's like, you know, going on a safari trip to figure out more about the world. But I think this part is what affects the diversity in a big way as well, in probably more fields than just genomics.
Brilliant, thank you, Katie. Again, you know, what do people think? Do people agree? Do they disagree? We've got a couple of people on Zoom, and maybe they want to share their thoughts. I think we might also have Luca, who might be joining us as well. Welcome, Luca. Thank you for joining. Do you want to tell us just a fantastic round of applause? Luca, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you're at the Festival of Genomics? What is your field?
Apologies. I need to turn off.
There we go. We can hear you. We can hear you well, Luca.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm a research nurse and I work with rare diseases and genomics. And I'm interested in diversity. And what is said is normally that we need just to increase participation of more diverse people, as has been said now. But as you pointed out already, I think who owns the data, I think the trust in the data owner is paramount again to increase diversity. No, you need to be safe to give your data away, because they are yours. They can be identifiable even if you cancel your name. People have been caught doing crimes, unsolved crimes, you know, because a relative was on the how do you say, where you look for your relatives. What is that?
Oh yes, the like 23andMe is an example.
Yes,
yeah.
The genealogy.
Genealogy
The
test.
genealogy, that was the thing. Exactly. So, you know, and as mentioned before, insurances, although there are moratorium, you know, you cannot disclose things, but if this data gets into the hands of someone that doesn't make good use of it, is obviously dangerous. So someone suggested the use of blockchains, this kind of, you know.
Oh yeah. So is that to use why would blockchain be useful for I've got, I think, yeah, just before I go to Katie, maybe explain why would blockchain be useful in the area of genetic testing?
Yes, so you could have your in terms of de-identify, in terms of use, in terms especially of further use of the data, because we often give our sample for a project, but then, as Katie said before, it can be sold on or used for other projects that we're not aware of. So in this sense, I think it would guarantee a bit like it happens with cryptocurrencies, no? It will guarantee that is yours, that is in your possession, you know, and you can release them whenever. I think that will be the future, you know. Otherwise, it's too prone to be misused, really, no?
Fantastic. Oh, thank you, Lucas. So yeah, so I think Lucas brought up a really interesting point, which has got a few hands raised and interest, which is the idea of using blockchain as a way of anonymizing data. I'm going to go to Mikey and then Katie.
Well, I've got 2 points here. I think it's funny enough, this guy that I was talking about that got his genome sequence was a blockchain expert as well, and he definitely saw the future in blockchain. But you know, the size of the blockchain would be enormous if you're talking about everyone's genetic data. But it's possible in the future, and I think, in a way, what blockchain is doing with things like Bitcoin anyway is kind of actually changing our understanding of ownership. And I think that's actually the stumbling block here, is the way we consider how we own things. In a way, this genetic data is just a natural resource that we're all kind of wanting to stake a claim on, and that's possibly the wrong way to look at it. I mean, for example, Evie, you're an identical twin, so you already are sharing your genetic data with your twin, whether you like it or not. So, does blockchain not only give us the answer, but also help us get out of this problem of ownership, or this kind of sticking point of ownership?
Fantastic. Thank you, Mikey. So welcome Anna, who's just joined us as well. Welcome. We've just been talking about using blockchain as a ways of anonymizing genetic data. Would you do you have any thoughts about this, or indeed the topic overall? There we go. Just slowly. There we go. Thank you, Mikey. So welcome Anna, who's just joined us as well.
Hi.
Welcome. We've just been talking about using blockchain as a ways of anonymizing genetic data.
Yeah, no, I think.
Do you have any thoughts about
Anna, can you just mute your, because you've got the stream on at the same time, so you just need to mute the stream, otherwise it gets very confusing. There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Just slowly. There we go.
Okay.
So welcome Anna, who's just joined us as well.
I think.
There we go.
Yeah.
Anonymizing genetic data.
Yeah, no, I think.
Do you have any thoughts about?
Can you just mute your, because you've got the stream on at the same time, so you just need to mute the stream, otherwise it gets very confusing.
Oh.
There we go.
There we go. What I might do, Anna, is I might just mute you for a second, because also we'll come back to you. Don't worry.
There's a point here actually. I just wanted to bring in Arshad on the on the chat, who has said that he got his and his wife's genome sequenced from Dante for 200 quid for Christmas presents. And I think if I'd have given that to my girlfriend as a Christmas present, I don't know if she would have seen the right side of it. But this is what Arshad did. Come on the chat and talk about this a little bit, because we found out a lot of interesting stuff there, and we'd love to hear that on the main Zoom. So jump on the Zoom. Anyway, back over to you, Evie.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I was going to go. We were talking a little bit about anonymizing data. Blockchain has been suggested by Luca as a suggestion. Anna, I'm going to go to you. You might just need to make sure that your live stream of this chat is turned off.
Hi, I've turned off the live stream now. I hope that's better.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, so I think blockchain's a really good idea, because I think it would mean end-to-end encryption internationally, potentially, so that all the genetic data could be shared internationally in an anonymized way on an individual basis, and exactly the same as as they do with cryptocurrency, basically. So that uses blockchain, doesn't it, fundamentally? So I think that would increase diversity, which is the title of this talk. And that's the point of it, is, there'd be international sharing with diversity. So yeah, I'm all for it, and I'm really excited, and I hope it happens.
Fantastic. And Anna, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do day to day?
Oh, right. So I'm a consultant pediatrician, previously honorary senior lecturer in epidemiology and pediatrics at Imperial College. I'm a weirdo in the sense that I adore my job. So I adore children. I am, of course, really excited by genetics on the whole. It's a bit like having antibiotics or vaccines. It's a new technology that will help diagnose the children that I see and hopefully help treat them. And so, yeah, I'm a distance learning neurogenetics tutor for the British Pediatric Neurology Association. I'm a founder fellow of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. I've done the AI course at Oxford.
Excellent.
And
Brilliant.
I've been to this amazing meeting 2 years ago, so it's really nice to be virtual.
Fantastic. And actually, I think a round of applause. Thank you, Anna. I think Mikey is wanting to ask a question, maybe put a comment in the ring.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask Anna, I mean, can you give us an example? Because it's good to know. How do you see genomics actually helping your work as a pediatrician? What kind of insights can it give that other approaches can't give?
Oh my gosh.
Just give us one example for, you know.
Okay, so we have many children who previously were undiagnosed, say with learning difficulties, epilepsies, mitochondrial myopathies, metabolic disorders. And lots of these children didn't have a diagnosis. Now with the 100,000 Genome Project and others, we can get a diagnosis, a genetic diagnosis in over 50%, which is amazing. And I'm hoping that there will be genetic interventions in the future. There are ethical considerations, obviously, but and in the short term, there are genetic or genetic inspired treatments, precision treatments for children with really very severe genetic conditions, and that has been amazing.
Fantastic. So and sort of maybe thinking about if anyone else wants to maybe impact on to share their own thoughts of how do you think your work as well would be affected by the future of genomics, and then you know, also thinking about, you know, how we've been talking a bit earlier about how we collect data, whether there's enough of it. We've talked obviously about diversity about genomics, and you know, what does that actually mean as well. So we're coming to sort of our final third of the session. So where do we want to take this, guys? You know, what are our thoughts on diversity in genetics? What are your thoughts of the future of genomics and genetic testing and treatments? And how do you want to shape that as well? What considerations need to go into the future of shaping that science? Any thoughts? Maybe Avgi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Let me know if I how to pronounce it. If you've got any thoughts you want to let us know, or Luca as well. Thank you for joining. Where are we going to take this, guys? Katie, I think you had some. Oh, sorry, I've heard Luca. There we go.
Hi. About the future, I think it'll be all about the costs as well. You know, about how expensive it gets, and what is the total pot for healthcare. So if genomic is taking too much and taking away, let's say, from mental health, that would be detrimental to diversity again. You know, the people they uses more services. You know that we need to have enough fundings really for it to thrive and to get to everybody. And especially because it's not just the sequencing, it's about collecting data, it's about phenotyping and all that. It's not just the sequencing itself. And that implies technology, again, personal data collection, and not everybody has got access to technology as well. So instead of becoming a democratic tool, it can become very much, he has got the potential. Then maybe we can avoid this, but there will be the steps to take in order for it to get to everybody and to cover the more diverse and the more and those that need it the most as well. No?
Brilliant. And Anna, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I think, Luca, you're absolutely right. And I mean, one of the brilliant things about COVID has been the international collaboration, and particularly when it comes to genomics, actually. And, you know, I don't know if anyone else has been following the you know, the genomics tracking since the origin, but it's fantastic. And so there is this model. And Luca, you're absolutely right, because certain countries have fantastic laboratories and other countries don't. And for everyone to be able to access the findings is really important. And also, you're right, you know, for everyone to be able to access the knowledge and the technology is really important. I agree with you. I mean, we know that ethnic minorities are underrepresented in practically all genomic samples. And I don't just mean black ethnic minorities, I mean all ethnic minorities, really. We know that, that's not good.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, so pointing out, oh, someone wanted to chime in. Luca, was that you?
Yeah. And I think also that at the same time, though, the use of genomic data is, and of data in general, no data is said to be the new oil. So, you know, there is profit to be made, you know, from pharmacogenomics, from whatever. And as usual in research, the participant, the time of the participant or them donating samples of it is not rewarded as well, you know, compared to the profits that can be made out. So in this sense, you know, just the rewarding of participation into the genomic research, not generally at the individual level, but also at the community level or whatever, that could be an incentive to increase again, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luca. So Luca's made quite an interesting point, you know, saying actually almost the genomic data, it could become the new oil. It can be very, very lucrative. Katie, I noticed you popped your video on a little bit earlier. Do you have any thoughts that you want to add to the ring?
I very strongly agree with Anna and Luca, and I think that, for example, for blood donations, we incentivize it. We even sometimes pay people for donating their blood. But if you want to get your genome analyzed, usually you have to pay, even though that data will be used for public interest, same way as your blood is used. So, and giving blood is much more private compared to genome analysis. So I think that there was a kind of a stigma for blood donations not too long ago as well. And it was tackled through a lot of education, through raising awareness, through pointing out how it can benefit other people and how it can benefit you personally, because every time you donate blood, you get tested and so on. So it talks more about how it benefits the person who is participating in it. Whereas in genomics, usually there is a lot of conversation about the public good, but very little conversation about addressing those personal concerns of privacy, of inclusivity, and such.
Brilliant. So Katie sort of pointing out that actually maybe the incentives that exist for people voluntarily getting genetic testing aren't the same, or we haven't got the type of infrastructure and opinions in the same way. I've got Mikey, you've got a point behind me.
Well, I just wanted to add that the same structural inequalities exist when it comes to blood donation, in that there are groups that have got different blood types that are not as well represented. So sometimes those blood supplies run out. So it's in a way, it is a similar problem, or there are some connections.
So it's a problem that's been seen in medicine throughout this country and other countries, no doubt, as well. Okay, so we've got some issues. You know, should we be paying people to get their genomes tested? Then is that the answer? Are there other ways that we people see this future changing? You know, where do we want to take it from here? Is it just a question of education? And what does that mean when you say education? What do you reckon? I think we've got some thoughts. I'm just checking if we've got any thoughts in the. Yes, for example, Arshad had to pay £200 to get his genome tasted. Should he be refunded that with a little bit extra now that he's provided
that was
genetic
a Christmas
data?
present. That was which, yeah. Anyway, I think it's a nice Christmas present. I sort of feel like I just know that my girlfriend would not like it as a Christmas present. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure it's different people have got different tastes. You know what I mean? She's actually quite a hard person to get presents for Christmas. Anyway, that's my girlfriend, that is, not Arshad's wife. Anyway, we're going off the subject. Yeah. I think the question about education and data being the new kind of oil or commodity is interesting, because obviously with oil, you've got the crude oil and then you've got the refined oil as well. You've got the petroleum, and I think it's the same with the data. You've got the crude data that the companies will come and refine into something that's kind of useful for humankind.
Or I'd like to point out, maybe just useful for them.
Did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add, Rebecca, to that? What's your experience of this?
So my experiences with this is quite limited, sadly, because my partner hasn't taken on it himself to buy me a genetic test for Christmas. And I haven't got around to it because I could perfectly do it myself, obviously. So my thoughts on this is that the only experience I have is by using like a 23andMe ancestry or a similar one for my mum, because she really wanted to know what her ancestry was, because always, everyone has this in their family where they go, oh, that great granddad was said to have, traveled the world, and because we both have science backgrounds, we got that data and had a look at it, and it was just like, you're 95% British, which is fine, obviously, but you couldn't dig in further. But it was so frustrating because I know that we sent a whole DNA sample to these people. So where did that other data go, and why couldn't I access it in a way that was, useful to me? Because obviously it exists out there. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, no, thank you for sharing, Rebecca. So that's quite an interesting story, that you send off what is actually a huge amount of information. You get a very small amount of information back. We've got Kieran who's just joined the chat. So welcome, Kieran. Hello. We're talking about genetic testing. Have you ever done genetic testing yourself? Would you like to give that information away? And the personal question from me is, how these 23andMe tests and similar, how useful are they? Are they that accurate? I've always been quite skeptical about the type of information they actually give, and I think they're a bit meaningless, but maybe someone can enlighten me. I don't know. Kieran, have you got any initial thoughts on genetic testing?
Yeah, the only thing I know about it, which I wish might be not true, is that it's based on what everyone else has sent previously. So it's very ethnocentric, i.e. that it's Western white people sending it off. And then they look at all of that evidence they've got, but they're not really receiving stuff from the African continent, the Chinese continent, whatever. And therefore, the information's kind of limited to them analysing that sample. And supposedly, in years to come, Rebecca could send off the same sample and she'll get a completely different answer. So, I mean, okay, maybe it's a good project in the future, but at the moment, it just doesn't mean anything, really. So I think it's arbitrary. I mean, it's all very nice, but I don't think it means anything.
Thank you, Kieran. So yeah, maybe there's a point that actually, is it a bit arbitrary? Does it mean anything? Maybe we've got also Simon on the chat. Welcome, Simon. Hello. What do we understand when we actually get genetic information back about us? And does the general public know enough about genetic science to actually make sense of what that data is? Do people feel equipped? Do they understand? I've got a nod maybe from Rebecca, possibly. What do people think? Is this information actually good or useful for people, or do we need to be doing something else about it? Or maybe you guys are all fine. Maybe it's you just want to send off your information, but actually you haven't got too much that you want to get back. Mikey behind me, you have a point.
I just want to bring in something from yesterday's chat. If no one, let's go to Anna.
We'll go to Anna first, and then Mikey. Oh, you might just need to unmute yourself, Anna.
Sorry. So I think it's a very good point. You send off something, you only get half the information back, and actually they've sequenced your whole genome. And it'd be really nice, I think, to get the whole genome back so that in the future, if there were new discoveries about what bits of that genome meant, you know, you could look back or ask another doctor or another geneticist to look back at it in the future, like you do with x-rays. You know, you're given your chest x-ray to take home. If you travel countries, you can, you know, show it. And I think that is a good point. And I think Luca's point's also very important, in the sense that, yeah, people do patent knowledge and discoveries, don't they? And the people who patent the knowledge and discoveries aren't always the people who provided the knowledge. We know that with you know, big pharma. Sorry, that's my 2 penny worth.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And actually, I think we're getting to the point where we might have to be going round to final thoughts. No, we're all right. Don't worry.
We've got another 45 minutes.
That's all right. Perfect. That's good to know. Well, I mean, I'm going to say, like, where do we want to take the conversation from here? We might get to the point where we swap hosts. Actually, I was going to say. So as we do a seamless transition between hosts, just like before, have a think about where you want to take this conversation going. So we've been talking about diversity in genetic testing. We've been talking about the issues of giving away your data and how much you get back as a benefit. We've been talking about how it might be used in the future. So hold on to all those thoughts as we go for a seamless transition with transition music.
Oh. Let's just see how well this works. Hello. Can you hear me okay? Is that working? Is that nice and clear and crisp? Oh, no,
Just about. Just
Not sure
about.
if that's the mic that is catching your voice, but we can hear you somehow.
Say that again. Is it this mic here? Can you hear me now? No.
We can
We
hear
can.
you, but not like nicely.
Not nice.
Yeah,
What's
as
that?
if you were at the end of a tunnel.
Okay, hang on. That should all be right. I don't know what's going. Maybe we've killed this. Okay, we'll just have to use this microphone instead. I'll just have to use this one. How about now? That should be better. Okay, so just a quick recap. We started off talking about diversity, and then we've kind of moved on to talk about, well, I mean, the whole thing is around diversity, but it's like, what does that really mean in genomics? Then we talk, what do we talk about next, Evie?
Talking about selling data.
Yeah,
and
selling data.
benefits.
Yeah, and then could we kind of reimagine how to sell data or how to own data, or what that really means? And then more recently, we talked a little bit about the usefulness of acquiring all this data, but who owns it? So there was that. We kind of, that's what we're kind of talking about now, I suppose. But it's kind of up to you where you want to take this, Anna.
Sorry, can I just say, I feel very strongly that the person whose genetic data it is owns the data. I know that, you kind of slightly sign away yourself when you get a genetic test, but I do think that the data belongs to the person whose data it is. My genomic data is mine.
Yeah.
My genes are mine. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
What do other people think about that? Have you got any views?
Do I think my genetic data is mine? Well, yes. I mean, it's mine, and it's the rest of my family's as well. So I think whatever you do then necessarily affects other people as well. I'm just making sure I'm in shot. There we go. And Luca pointed out as well that you've had people who have been convicted of crimes because they've been they have had a distant relative who has had their genetic testing. But no, I think I agree. I think that's why the appeal of blockchain was such a I think took on such a great and end-to-end encryption is such a intriguing idea, because it does allow that huge exchange of information, but allow people to own it as well. So I mean, it's and I think the main thing is it's so hard to anonymize genetic data because it is so personal. So that's another struggle as well.
Yeah, I mean, can it really be anonymous as data? And what difference does anonymizing make the data as well? These are all some questions. Anna, you've got the point about Anna.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, you know what, if the whole world shared their genomes, we might find that actually somebody else has exactly the same genome, and that would be amazing. So it's just a thought.
Okay, so you might find your doppelganger. Some doppelgangers are easier to find than others. Kieran, were you going to say something?
Well, I sort of wanted to back what Anna said, that, you know, we obviously, I think, well, I say obviously, we should own our own data. But also I think the anonymization is quite important, really, because there's bound to be prejudice come up around it. And if you've got a certain gene and you know, I just think if people can get access to it, it's going to be used against you by somebody at one point. So of course, I think it has to be protected. But I like the blockchain idea, but I can't see how you protect that. But then again, I know nothing about blockchain, really.
Maybe
made a bit of money on Bitcoin once, but that's not really relevant.
So you've used the blockchain, making a bit of cash on Bitcoin, but you're not sure how it works. Luca, can you say a bit more?
I have no idea how it works. I just accept that it does.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how it works. I think there are two things. You will be in control a bit more. At the same time, it will slow down science, because slow down science progress if I need every time to give my consent for it to be used.
Yeah.
You know, in the open science world, it could slow that down. But as you say, it wouldn't be totally anonymizable, you know, if it makes sense, because it's still your DNA, but still you will be in control who you release it to. You know, that would be the thing, but it wouldn't be totally anonymizable.
Yeah,
but then really... you mentioned that in terms of amount of data, it'd be very difficult to achieve. Is that right?
Well, yeah, that was when I was on the outside and I was able to give my opinion. But yeah, I just, it would, I mean, already Genomics is like using huge farms of servers. And imagine if that was all then, I mean, the way that Bitcoin works, as far as I understand it, then that's it kind of encoded into a very long ledger that gets swapped around that everybody has to have. So that would be huge amounts of data going backwards and forwards, as far as I know. But Katie's got a point. Maybe you know something as well about blockchains and how they work, and whether it could help us get out of this conundrum of ownership versus public goods.
Well, there was another point I wanted to make, but to answer your question, I think the amount of data that would be going on would relate directly to the level of encryption we could, or even compression that we could do on that data. I mean, I'm not a geneticist. I'm not sure how exactly it is digitalized at the moment, but a lot of data can be compressed and still be accessed the same way. For example, the videos 20 years ago, they would take up much more bandwidth than they take today. So even though we still see higher resolution view on the screen, we are using less data on the internet. So I think that data point, how much data is going around, is something that will get tackled automatically as our compression and technology moves forward. But one point that I would love to highlight is that we talk about how blockchain could help it, the privacy and so on. However, I think this part is very strongly coming from our direction, whereas there seems to be very little about it coming from regulatory institutions like government. I mean, we are looking at ways, how can we ensure the privacy? How can we ensure fair use and such? But government seems to be just putting their hands away and saying, well, do as it comes. And also there is very little transparency in it. For example, I mean, even if it cannot be anonymized fully, just because of what it is, if I could get a notification anytime someone uses that data and knowing for what purpose they use, and if I had a right to withdraw it if I dislike it, I mean, if I would continuously keep my rights on that data, probably I would be much more inclined to share it, even though it wouldn't be 100% anonymous or such. But since the moment I give it away, I lose any kind of rights or control over it.
Yeah. So there could be a kind of assumed.
Yes, it's like, you know, maybe today I'm very happy to share it, but maybe 20 years later, I will not be so happy about this decision and I won't be able to retract it.
Mm.
And this is, I think, the place where the government could very easily and quickly just create regulations that if you want to withdraw your data at any point in time, you can do so. It would also be an incentive for companies to use it fairly because they would be afraid of losing that data. And especially if they have to pay for access, let's say even if it's a one-off payment, but they lose the access if they don't use it fairly, I think it could help with balancing it out.
So you're saying really the government could introduce a kind of protocol about how this information is gathered, and this idea of notifications. There are technological ways of doing things which maybe won't be so heavy after all. But it needs somebody to step in and create this protocol. And that, in your mind, is the government that would do that. Kieran?
Well, yeah, I mean, I second what Katie was saying in the sense that we all have done things when we were younger that we'd rather wish we hadn't done, especially anything that's gone out on the public domain. Yeah. So yeah, we don't want to be making bad decisions. And I think the other problem is that if you just put an advert saying, find out your ancestry now, you know, and then the terms and conditions, I agree to all my data being used forever, tick, but I get a free ancestry kind of thing. Loads of people are going to sign up for it. No one's even going to read the terms and conditions. So I think there has to be government legislation in the end, and which protects people from, you know, their own foolhardiness, let's say, you know, or inexperience of what they're doing. And we don't really know the implications in the future of how people will use it because it's such a burgeoning thing. We don't know whether we'll have fascist governments in control in the future and wish that everything had been withdrawn. And I think we have to prepare for any situation. Look at the Trump thing. I mean, we just don't know. So,
so you think that if we get a fascist government takeover, having that genetic data could be a real problem?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think you can rule it out anyway. That's for sure. I'm not saying that will happen or likely to happen, but you can't. You just don't know.
Okay.
And you know, maybe that governance of this information needs to come from an international forum. It needs to be led by scientists for certain. Yeah. But it needs to be a sort of almost an international treaty of how we're going to treat this stuff.
Okay, so it's bigger than governmental. It could be international. It could be global. There's a lot of nodding going on. I mean, do people agree with this idea? There should be like an international protocol, and who is the body to do it? Anna.
Hi, I think that points, Katie. You know, the point that you made about this data being out there forever, and you don't know what the future implications are, is actually really important. We have to make plans for the things that we don't know are going to happen. You know, and there's this brilliant book, isn't there, by John Winton, where there's a sort of a society where genetic anomalies are not tolerated, for example. And yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think I hadn't thought about it before this talk, but I think it's right. I think it's an international collaboration, if you like, rather like a kind of WHO or Geneva type agreement that, you know, genetic data isn't used for to discriminate, basically, I guess.
Okay, so there could be some kind of almost Geneva Convention on genetic data. And maybe that could also, that might provide a way forward and help us progress and actually focus on the, you know, because I mean, I think, you know, a lot of the chat here at the Genomics Festival is about the possibilities, but if those possibilities are sinister possibilities, that, you know, that in a way that fails to engage the public, doesn't it, or engages them in the wrong way. So does it need to be an international body like the WHO to organize this? And would you trust the WHO more than the government or more than a private company? That's my question. It's a quick poll on that one. Katie?
Well, I think that we are at a point in history where instead of putting trust in the government, we can put trust in technology. if we design it in such a way that independently of, like, we can have more control on our data than the governments through the blockchain or other means, in that case, if the government changes, becomes fascist, or any other kind of government that we disagree with, so long as just with our own incentive, we can just withdraw that data. Essentially, it would give us more power to control the direction in which we're going, the direction in which the data is used. I mean, I think it would make it much, much more democratic than it is today. And I don't think that it's necessarily, you know, if everyone agrees on the protocol, and the protocol is designed in such a way that people continue to have the control over their data, then it doesn't matter whether it's WHO or like World Health Organization or something else. Essentially, the people get the control over it, and they can push the governments to do certain things. For example, if a certain government uses that data in the wrong way, they would just lose access to it eventually.
Okay, so it could have privacy and ownership locked in, and somehow, But yeah, I mean, do people believe in this kind of global approach? Would that work? Would people? Simon, you've not said anything yet. Are you willing to sign up to a global genomics library? Submit your DNA. Just say in the chat if you're not if you're more comfortable with that than coming on the microphone. It's kind of up to you.
No, I can.
Yeah, go on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a bit late to the party. Look, I'm an arts graduate. I failed my physics O level. A lot of this stuff is over my head. But now we're starting to get into the realms of things that I do, and which is symptomatic of the problem, right? Because I'm involved in a lot of other stuff, and we only have so much space in our heads. And so in the same way that some people don't really think about climate change or politics or where our stuff comes from because they're busy with other stuff, I've not really had time to engage with a lot of this. But I do. It's not hard to work out where the problems are with. I mean, I think it's Holocaust Memorial Day today, isn't it?
Yep.
And as the earlier person said, so there's a story I heard that the Dutch had fantastic census information, and that was neutral. But then the Nazis invaded, and all of a sudden, that census information meant they knew where and when, where to look to find the people they want to find. And that's, I mean, this is Frankenstein, right? Isn't it? It's the idea of technology is neutral, and you know, you don't know when they split the atom and things like that. You don't know where it's gonna lead. But I think in terms, so I was listening to that, and then the whole, I mean, data colonialism is an expression that's being used to talk about these worries that the same principles that lead us to have a world that's hierarchical, where the global north sits astride, you know, the exploitation of the global south, that this will be continued through data. And I was listening to what you were saying about how do we stop this, and I'm coming to a conclusion, so don't worry. I think the problem you've got, it's like most things, the people that really know the potential of this, right, are, for example, the people that have worked in the defense agencies for various countries and then leave those countries and go and work in business. So they're so far ahead of us, I feel like. By the time we catch up to the implications of what can be done, it's going to be too late, because these people will be running CEOs of corporations and things like that. And then in terms of, well, what can be done to stop it? Well, you know, we do have arms treaties and things like that, for example, obviously. But I think the problem you've got is some of the people that are high up in politics are also the people who sit on the boards of these corporations. And so, you know, it's a bit like, well, yeah, I could make a fuss about this, but I might I'll be chairman of the board of this company in a few years' time, so I won't. And also, I guess probably echoes a little bit unilateralism versus multilateralism. And as long as all countries are working within their private little bubble, ignorant of what the other ones are doing, they might think, oh, well, you know what, we're going to be, it's a crooked game, but we're going to be ahead of it. So let's not sign up to a treaty because we've got the kit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. There's a few concepts I want to bring in there. The data colonialism, I think, is a very interesting one for this chat. Absolutely. And yeah, this idea of, I mean, it echoes actually what Sasha said on the chat. And Sasha, if you want to come in to the Zoom, we'll very much welcome your point here. The assumption is that we have governments that don't have embedded inequalities in their systems. So who we trust and who we invite into the conversation needs to be aware if the existing inequalities may be supporting, we might be supporting with our research. So yeah, technology has got a built-in bias that requires examination, says Sasha. So yeah, come help us examine it, because that's, I think, exactly what we're doing right now. And I just want to also say welcome Sadaf, if I've got your name right. We're at the moment, we're kind of talking about, I suppose, how to move forward on a global scale, how to encourage people to be happy to submit their genetic information. Do we need a global protocol? The WHO has been mentioned as a body that could manage that. Yeah, that's where we are right now. Anyone want to jump in on this one? Any thoughts? It's up to you the direction you want to take this, Katie.
Okay, I'll take it in the direction I don't want to take it into.
Oh, okay. Sometimes that's good to do that as well.
I will say a point that I dislike, but I think it is a valid point nevertheless. I would take an example of Facebook, where we share our personal data. We know it's used in the wrong ways, but millions of people do it anyway. Why is that so? And one of the more important things in that field is the convenience part. It makes it more convenient to communicate with other people. It makes more convenient for me. And that essentially is kind of, again, an incentive to do it. Whereas in this area, it's not convenient at the moment at all.
Yeah.
So
what would be the equivalent of a genomic selfie?
So I think it's a it's a puzzle with multiple parts, and I think that tackling each one of those parts would give a cumulative effects to the whole field. But at the moment, like, accessing your own data is very, very hard, and in some cases almost impossible. I mean, if I do a DNA test in NHS, I very highly doubt there would be any way for me to get it for myself, a hard copy of it, or a digital copy, which I could use and analyze from my own perspective.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out this, that Rick is doing the visualizations here in the background. And I think he's summed it up very nicely, with Boris Johnson in charge of, well, your data, let's say, not my data, but your data. But yeah, is it the same? You know, Facebook has kind of cracked it when it comes to social data. And that, what's that about? I mean, you kind of started on that, Katie, but maybe we could think more about that. But also, when it comes to our medical data as a whole, do we have the access that we want to have anyway? Or do we need a different mode of access, and would that actually help the information?
Well, I think,
yeah,
I think the access has improved significantly when and the pandemic, I think, pushed it forward, because there wasn't a digital patient access where people could see their own test results and all of the history and such, but much more people became aware of it during the pandemic, even though it existed for a few years before that. So I think that the access issue has been done in other fields. So it can be in a little bit copy-paste way. Like when you go to patient access and you access your medical records, there could be your DNA record right there that you could download.
Yeah.
All the way encrypted, like the same way.
Would it make any sense to you though?
You know, at the moment, there is nothing I can do with that data myself unless I'm a researcher. But as it becomes more popular, just like we have a ton of personality tests because people are curious about themselves, I think you could have anonymized tools online where you upload the data or a part of it in an encrypted way, and you get certain answers. A trade-off could be that they anonymize it and use it for research. I think there are so many ways to design an industry around it. It's just very few people who are involved. Like, they take a single perspective of let's say, public good, and they ignore personal views of people who are doing it and their personal concerns.
So maybe go for more kind of more respond to people's personal concerns rather than this
it's like
sense of the greater goods.
A totally off example, but it illustrates well, like why Windows Mobile died off, because there was no apps on it. So I think if an NHS or anyone would provide a tool that does a rough analysis and gives you a few points, people will be curious. They will, you know, it could even become a conversation topic in a bar.
Yeah.
So
how would that
I think
conversation go?
Well, I mean, I've had conversations without my DNA analysis about my ancestry, for example.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Or you could
Me
say
too.
that
Yeah.
you know, I found that I have these genes that put me in high likelihood of getting certain diseases early in my life, but I didn't get them. And you know, it's interesting. And since I already know that I could, but I didn't, or at least not yet, and especially if it's, you know, something that affects early in life, it's not something I would be afraid to disclose, because I know that it's there, but it doesn't affect me. And at the same time, it can raise the conversation. It can become a topic of discussion for people. I mean, same way as with social media, a lot of times, you know, people wouldn't feel comfortable saying what they're eating for dinner every day, let's say 20 years ago. But then suddenly it became a very popular thing to do for some reason.
Okay. So it could be the equivalent of, like, you know, you could be chatting about what's on your, I don't know, what's on your Y chromosome, for example. Could it be a talking point? Could it be like an icebreaker? Will we, when we do our facilitation things in the future, will we just be breaking the ice with a few kind of genetic tidbits to start off with? We've got, is it Hira and Sadaf? If you want to, I've probably got your names wrong, but if I've got it right, that's good as well. Please feel free to chime in. I'm not quite sure where this conversation is going. I can roughly tell you where it's been already. We're talking about, I guess, this kind of like standard protocol of how to, you know, of how we manage genetic data. We want to have it on a blockchain. We want to have it private but open. We want to have it owned by the individual but available to all. These are some of the things. I mean, it's an ideal as such. Just maybe going back to the original starting point, would this help our question about diversity in genomics? Is this actually the barrier to diversity that exists, or are there other reasons why we've got this diversity issue? Evie?
I was just thinking before about whether we were discussing if you try to collect genomic data. I mean, we were thinking, could it be better as an open access technology platform? Would it be something that's organized by something like the WHO? And I think it probably is better to be the latter. So it's better to be something like the WHO, because from my understanding of the science at the moment is that we have the problem at the moment with genomic data is that we've got a small subsection of like the whole globe. And I don't think that's necessarily just talking about whether you're white or black or South Asian. I think that's also to do with global area as well. And I think there's a danger of when we talk about genomics and diversity to try and link that too much to race when that's actually just a social construct. So when you're linked with somewhere like the WHO, for example, you've got an opportunity to get mass global data. And I think the issue is not the issue is not trying to get underrepresented groups in it. It's trying to get a large amount of data to benefit everyone. Now, that might be my misunderstanding of the science, but I understood that actually it's very easy to get confused by these things and put correlations where actually there isn't. And that could also be, I'm reading Superior by Angela Cini now at the moment, and that's really interesting in trying to like debunk some of the kind of these myths that have arisen with genetics at the moment. So I'll be interested to see if I've got that science correct or incorrect.
Okay. Tell us about some of the myths that need to be debunked.
I think people just so might automatically say, oh, if someone is South Asian and they also have the population might be susceptible to a particular genetic trait, then they would say, oh, there's obviously a causation, when it's actually nothing to do with that at all. And it can be quite dangerous because it sort of allows people to justify this kind of race science that goes on, and people using science to justify like racist views. I think it's something that people were talking about yesterday as well, of taking science to just establish whatever your worldview is.
So you kind of take a bias, you build it into the experiment, it proves your prejudice is scientific in a way.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I wonder what people think. Maybe that's just my misunderstanding of like the topic, but I do wonder how does that relate to genomics as a field at the moment?
I mean, is genomic diversity the same as ethnic or racial diversity, or is it something different?
There is, can I?
Yeah, please, Luca, yeah.
There is, you know about the health gradient in London, no? That it goes west to east, where the more east you live, you will live a few years less, maybe 10 years less than someone that lives in Westminster.
So like from Kensington to Poplar, where we're
based. Isn't it? It's like each stop of the tube, you lose a few years.
Right.
And there is at the same time in Brick Lane, they are doing a genomic testing on the Bangladeshi community.
Yeah.
To see why they are got more diabetes or what. Yeah. But wouldn't he, as you said, be more interesting if we were doing it on the whole of East London, on the logo, on the geographical region. Yeah, and to see, so you will see whether it's the environment as well, whether there are intercultural differences and all that, instead of this. And still on the geographical topic, I was saying that there are many projects that are either national or regional, like the Icelandic Genome Project, Canada, but even Sardinia in Italy, for instance. So the geographical dimension is kind of being addressed, and there it gives you, to an extent, it gives to the community, to the population, ownership, via the community, I would say. No, that's my.
Okay, that's a really good point. I'm just gonna. Rebecca, you've turned your video on it. I feel like you're shaping up to say something.
I was just coming back to rejoin because I'm afraid I am quite, I've got a lot of things going on. But I just wanted to still that I saw some chat from Sasha saying I haven't seen how you can separate social political constructs from genomics medicine and how people are diagnosed, treated, and tested, even though scientifically race doesn't exist. Yeah. Which is 100% true. Biological race does not exist. It is a social contract, but it definitely has all of these effects that filter down. Yeah. As Luca was saying, like culturally. Yeah. How can you do this?
So there's some huge bombs being dropped in by Sasha. But Sasha, come on the Zoom and let's get your opinion, because I think that you're really
the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, the last 15 minutes. Come on, jump on and let's hear what you got to say about this. But I mean, there's this question about that Lucas just raised about this kind of the geographical mixed in. I mean, Sasha's also made the point, the genomic kind of inequalities are also mixed in with geographical and social and other things. It's all in one big network. And we've got another point as well from either Jose or Jose. So we've got a lot of stuff coming in the chat. Kieran, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's sort of echoing roughly what's been said, but yesterday on this forum, there were two assumptions. One, that there was this genetic thing that showed that people could tell someone's politics by looking at a picture. And therefore, the scientist that was telling us about this was saying, which kind of proves that genetics basically predict your politics. And I said, well, what were the markers? And he said, well, I think it was things like eyes together. Now, Rebecca pointed out that she'd looked at that study and actually was looking at all sorts of things like hairstyles, clothes, you know, you could see the wider picture. Now, because he was a scientist, he wanted to present that study as a proof that genetics lead to this. And that's typical of scientists. How many times they edit out the whole thing just to suit their own agenda or their own ideas. Right. And I'm not from the scientific community, but it always shocks me how quick they are to jump to it, even though they're meant to, and they do know a lot more about it than I do. And they should be clever enough not to do that kind of stuff. But, you know, and the same we've got with the BME and COVID thing going on at the moment. You know, there are lots of studies showing that vitamin D could be the reason for that because of poor absorption of sunlight. So just finding a gene that they share and then saying, oh, people dying of COVID also have this gene, that's what it is, and therefore it gets into the press. It's bogus. It's absolutely bogus because you're not looking at the wider picture, which goes back to what was his name, the Italian guy? Luca, which is that you need to be much wider in your studies and you need to like include a lot more to be able to get any real picture.
Okay, Katie, you've got your hand up as we're into the last 10 minutes now, as Rebecca pointed out. So that doesn't stop you people watching on the video coming onto the Zoom and giving your pointers, some strong points being made by either Jose or Jose. I don't know. I'd love to find out on the chat. So come and make your points on the Zoom. You've still got time. Katie, what's your point?
I just want to, I was a bit away for like 2 minutes, hopefully I didn't miss much, but there is Sasha's message on the chat that genetic data is shared information with your family, so like ethics of it and so on. And it reminds me straight away of a lot of illegal parties going on and people being, for some reason, unable to distinguish between personal good and a public good. Very often people put that individuality way above everything else. And I think these different perspectives of what's more important, is it just me, which is the most important person in the universe? Is it my community? Is it the whole humanity? And I think this is the thing which we need to change in general, to figure out how to merge all of those things, how to make everything important. And when it comes to question either or, I am pretty sure that the public good has to come above, because all of us, all our lives, considering that all of us are using internet at the moment for this conversation, is the result of all the people before us, what they did. So, I mean, we are not living on an inhabited island or somewhere in the woods, all alone. So since we are part of the community, I think that the communal good in this case is more important. So for example, if I knew that my DNA could help, let's say, transgender research or anything like that, I personally, I hope people won't judge me for that, I really wouldn't be bothered what anyone in my family thinks about it or anything like that, because for me, the public good is much more important than just 5 or 6 people.
Okay, so in your mind, the public good is always more important. I mean, do we have a strong conception of what that public good is? Different people, we talked about this yesterday as well, that there are some people ignoring the COVID restrictions and going out to party. And it does have an effect, you know, it does have not an effect, a kind of implication here of some, you know, how we treat this kind of, this question of the commons. Jose has said that no one owns the genome. I have part of it in all of us that makes the whole. We are here to help fill the book of the genome. And I think that's a really good point as well. But, you know, where does this idea, you know, where is this individuality in the sense of me, 23 and me, it's not 23 and us. Is that a very Western thing? Is that kind of, in a way, one of the kind of conceptions that's actually preventing us getting more diversity when it comes to genomics? Anyway, it's probably time for final thoughts at this point. Anyone got a final thought? Rebecca?
Yeah, my final thought is that this diversity in genomics is definitely an issue, and it is something we definitely need to do more about. But the way we go about it has to be really thought out and carefully managed, all the way from the data we collect to how we educate and how we communicate that to everyone.
I mean, what do you think the sort of like, you know, we've tackled it on so many levels, from the question of ownership through to who's got the data colonialism we heard about as well. And we talked about the entry point, we talked about access to resources and laboratories. What do you think the most important kind of obstacle to be removed is?
I think awareness and the idea that this is something that the thing to remove is the idea that it doesn't matter to you, and it does matter to you, and it does affect you. And being able to engage in genomics is, for everyone, will have such a big impact. So it's the idea that that's the biggest thing, that we need to make sure that everyone understands it and go, this matters to me and I want it, I want to engage.
Fantastic. Great. Final thought. No, go for this one, Evie. Oh, hang on.
There we go.
Why, thank you.
Let's Anna, you've come back on. You've just come here just in time to get your final thought. I just want to say, those people watching on the Vimeo, if you don't want to come on, give your final thought on the chat. We will see it and we will read it out. But Anna, what's your final thought?
Well, I want to say thank you for a really very thoughtful discussion. So I do think that people or organizations that work for the greater good have an influence and are important. So I think these discussions are really important, and if they're not had, and if everybody doesn't act for what they hope is going to be the good of humanity, then yeah, things can go terribly wrong. Yeah.
I mean, just talking about the idea of the discussion, one of the things that we always try to do at Festival of Genomics with Talkaoke is try and have this open discussion that's kind of accessible to all. I mean, but it's such a complex field, and it's very hard to actually engage a wider community in something that is actually going to be a big part of their future. What do you think some of the answers are to actually being able to find things that people can grab onto, and, you know, for a more general audience to get an interest in genomics?
Do you mean me?
Well, just for you personally, or just for the greater good as well.
I think you've made a pretty good start, and anything that anyone does is really helpful. People are interested in it anyway, and will ask questions anyway.
Yeah, so it's about culturing that curiosity. I think Katie mentioned curiosity as well, trying to grow that curiosity and turn it into something. We're getting final thoughts. Kieran, have you got a final thought?
I wish I did. I think really my final thought is that, yeah, we need to share this information. We need to understand it a little bit. And I think as a lay person, as a real lay person, I think I would like to know more about its relevance, really. At the moment, it seems irrelevant to my life, and I think it's probably not. And I think this is probably as big as the internet being created. And I think we in a way, I would say the scientific community should start engaging the public in it.
Yeah.
It's bigger than we realise. That's all.
Okay, so the relevance isn't necessarily clear. You're nodding there in the background. I can see. Evie, have you got a final thought, or do you want to add to that?
Yes, I just thought there was, we've had, I'm always quite interested in like sort of the practical things that people put forward about solving it. And the two ones that stood out to me today were, first of all, I think one that Katie brought up, which was about making, why can genetic testing not be a bit more like blood testing, where like there's a big information drive about it, someone goes, you get a bit of you get tested at the same time, you get a biscuit, get a cup of tea, and you have kind of a bit more of a dialogue between donor and medics. So I thought that was a really nice idea. And then also, and then within that, talking about blockchain and end-to-end encryption being a way of processing genetic information is again something that I feel could are both things that people could, again, be that hook for people to actually understand and get involved a bit more. So I'd like to put those forward to the Festival of Genomics and Biodata.
Okay, so some ideas there, and you're getting the thumbs up from Anna. Final thoughts. Anyone else got final? Thanks for the final thoughts. By the way, Jose on the chat, the discussion is very positive, but we can discuss when we know something. I'm not sure whose final thought this is. Might be Rebecca's. We need to educate and inform people and scientists that they're all benefiting from studying the genomes in some way. But I understand others, because why should I help you when I'm not getting profit, when you're getting profit and I'm not? I messed that one up. Simon, final thought. You've turned your camera on, so I feel like that's you squaring up for final thought.
And I've got a light in my hat as well, so I'm quite with the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two brief thoughts. First.
Uh-oh. We lost you there, Simon. We've lost Simon there. We're going to come back in a second for that. Maybe, Simon, you just want to turn off your camera. Or maybe it's too much bandwidth. I'm just going to come to Luca. Luca, have you got a final thought for us?
Yes, it's interesting, and on Jose that was saying we don't owe our genome, and we said we would like to owe our genome, no? And we are no, I think we are 99.9% the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in a sense, and I think someone tried to copyright some genes. I think it was the BRCA gene, no?
Yeah.
And then the High Court said there's no, because it's a natural product, no? So in the sense, no, it comes to how diverse we are, or no?
Yeah.
Or the one race.
Yeah. So none of our genome is original, we might say.
Yeah. But still, I would like to have property of mine, you know.
Yeah.
If I could choose. And then you know, just to, you know, for the topic that it was diversity and what the hurdles are, I think, as we said, trust for sure, but also access, also the opposite. You know, some people are more likely to be welcome into genomics, no?
Yeah.
And others remain excluded as well.
I mean, I think that sense of welcoming is really, really important. We certainly find it when we try and do the Talkaoke. It's making people feel welcome is half the job, really. If you want to get people to participate, you've really got to help them feel welcome. Simon, you're back on without your camera. Do you want to try and give us the final thought? We didn't hear it last time.
Oh, did you get the bit about control of data?
No, we got nothing at all. We just got the bit about the hat, and then that was it.
Yeah, I talked about technology. So just very quickly, it mirrors all the other stuff that's going on in the world. Who controls it, has the power, vested interests, people's agendas, corporations, governments. So it's just, and you know, that colonialism, there was old colonialism, now there's data colonialism. So that's just ongoing, isn't it? Only the technology has changed. And then secondly, just to say that I only came to this because I enjoy Talkaokes. Otherwise, I would have felt a little bit intimidated. I would have felt it was a bit over my head. Perhaps I wouldn't have seen the relevance. I would have said, well, I've got a lot going on already. So I only came because I knew you guys create a space where that's quite welcoming, a bit like being in the pub or something like that. So I think we need more things like this so that we can have conversations like this. So now I'm like, oh yeah, it is actually really relevant to me and I can engage with it.
Okay, well, that's a great point, and we definitely give you a round of applause for that. Any final thoughts before we log off? I just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks to those watching on the Vimeo as well. And you know, some of those points coming through from the chat have been absolutely vital. And Anna, you put a point in the chat. Thanks everyone for that. It was a helpful discussion, certainly helpful for us. And long may it continue. And I think we've got to carry on this idea of opening up the Festival of Genomics to those that know less about it, just to get those outside voices, which are really important, I think, also for diversity. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, everyone. We're going to play the theme music, and we will say goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.